All right, so now we are putting on panel lines and I have the nacelles to do, and I'm showing you that I did one nacelle, and you can see there's where the landing gear is going to go ultimately, that oblong shaped thing, and there are some curved panels. The rectangles on the ends there, that's where the exhaust is going to go, and the exhaust shrouds. So that's going to be fine. And what I did with this was I basically drew in things kind of freehand where I want them to go. And I'm going to show you how I do the curved parts, which is the hard parts. But all those, I put those in already on that nacelle. But the curved parts, like there and there, I haven't put in yet, and nothing on the bottom on that nacelle is put in. But what I did was I looked at my 3 views and I drew in like where the approximate shape of things was, where I thought the things should go. And as it turns out, for instance, the shape of the landing gear, I was a little nervous where that's going to go. But I'll show you what I did. Now this is to get over a curve. This is this tape, plastic tape that's used for old-fashioned label makers. And so what it's got on it, I usually cut the piece in half because if it's thinner, it's easier to go around a surface. It isn't perfect, but it helps a little. And what you have to do now is it's self-adhesive, so you got to pull the backing off. Pretty simple to do. And that just, now you've got a sticky side and you've got a straight edge on there. And now all you do is you fit it around the area that's, make it as close as you can to your curve. Now, having said that, I play around with this quite a bit to make it fit. And I left it in here on purpose to show you what you need to do. It's just a fair amount of being careful. It's not like it's impossible to do, but you can see I do a lot of basically fiddling around, pushing it down, making sure it's tight. You also notice that it isn't always as tight as it should be, and it doesn't stick as well as it can at times. And this is a fresh piece. So this may or may not work for you, but this has helped me a little bit with getting some curves. But I'm just basically fitting it so that I see my little pencil line. And these, by the way, these two pieces here were panel lines or where paper actually was added, where it was put together in the model. And then you can see now I've got a solid edge and I start coloring in with my mechanical pencil. And I'm giving a fair amount of pressure. And I just carefully go around that outside edge where that straight part is, and I'm just trying to make sure that I make an indentation. So you go a few times, make sure you got it the way you want. And in this case, this one worked in terms of I got it all the way around that top piece. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes you got to do them in sections. And that's because, again, you are going around a curve that's not only just the curve of the cowling around, but you've also got it has, it gets thinner on one end and fatter on the other. So putting a piece of rectangular tape around doesn't always work. It follows around, but you'd have to actually cut the tape to be curved to really make it fit. So sometimes you do things and you gotta put them in little bits at a time. So here I got that front one on, and I'm doing the very same thing with this other, the rear seal, the rear seam back there. And you can see that now I realize, wait a second, I'm in front of that oil cooler or whatever that thing is there. It's not an oil cooler. I just found out what it was and I can't remember what it is. That piece. So I just flip it under there because this panel line has to go all the way around and kind of tuck underneath that piece. But all I'm doing again is lining up my pencil line. I've already made sure by the eye that they're straight, so I'm not going to do something really crooked. And you just got to play with it until you have it the way you want it. And when you got it, and again, in this case, I think what I do is I get it down pretty good, but it's not perfect all the way around. So I think I sort of have to go in fits and starts, which is fine. I'm still trying to make sure it's covered and stuck. But now I start on one side, and you can see I go back and forth, and I get my little piece in there. But I think, in this case, it worked better than I thought. I actually got it to go all the way around again, within reason. But I'm just making sure, like I said, I'm pressing down because I'm trying to emboss. So this is going through the primer, and a lot of times you see the primer kind of chalky and it flakes off. and I'm actually making an indentation. And so when we paint all this, again, the idea is that the dark color of the pencil might help us kind of show off the panel line, and the fact that there's an indentation, that might help us too if we end up putting a wash on here or putting charcoal or pastels or something. Who knows what we're going to do? So anyway, that's exciting. And you can do things like erase things that aren't quite right, or when you go outside of the lines, because these black lines that you see, these pencil lines, are all, like I said, indentations. If you run the thing over an eraser over them, you won't pull that dark color out. Now, this bottom piece was the one I think I have to do in several little fits and starts, because this is part of the actual landing your oleostrut cover. So it's got a really strange shape. It's got basically a bi-eyeball curve on it, and it looks fine. But see what I did there, I knew I couldn't get it all the way around. I get it close, but I'm only going to follow it only so far. So there I got a little bit of straight edge, and I'm just following it just couple centimeters about, making sure I don't go past where I should. It looks fine, it's on the line. So then I do the same thing. Butt that piece up against, get it about as good as I can get it in terms of coming around, and I do a little more. And again, as you can see, if I followed it all the way around, I would have a big ugly line diagonally across the whole thing. But if you just do it in little bits, it seems to work. And ultimately on this one, I'll show you what I end up doing a little bit more, because you can see there's a curve. There's a gentle curve in there, and I can't make that work well. So what I did was I did it freehand. I just already have the thing kind of, roughed in, and then you can see I'm putting a heavier mark of pencil all around that piece, and I get it heavier and heavier, and it starts to make its nice long indentation, nice divots in there. But I actually did this little part, as I said, just freehand, because it is close enough. And then the other side now, I'm able to basically use the tape again, or even a ruler, I think, in order to get the last little bit down there. And I'm just refining that curve. But here I got to get that piece, the curve that goes down to the underside of the wing, and I get it close, and I think there it is. And I'm gonna very carefully place it, hold it in place, just trying to make sure things are so. And there I hit it with my pencil again, and that's good. Now the very last piece, I just decided I just have a little straight shot right down there. Why not just use the ruler? So I lined that up, and that worked really well. So you can use a combination of things, really whatever works. And there's got to be better ways to do this, and people can chime in, please, if you do this in different ways, because I'm not a panel rescriber much in my plastic models at all. I mean, I do it sometimes. I did on that Dornier recently, but I'm not real good at it. So I don't know of a really great way to do this, but this kind of tape does help. Now, the back part there is a relatively easy one. The back panel line there for the other part. So I cut that off to about the right size. Because it was too long, it's so hard and brittle, it gets difficult to work with. So again, I kind of cut it in half and make sure it's a squiggly line so I can really quick at a glance see which side is the straight edge. Take off the self-adhesive part and get ready to put it on there. And this is as tedious as it looks, and the reason I'm leaving it in here is you can see at least this is how I did it. As I said, there's likely better ways, more efficient, who knows. But this worked for me, and we'll see how well it worked when I really start painting the little sucker. That's when I'll really find out. But this one, it's more of a regular shape, and so I think I can get all the way around, and it should hold on. It's a brand new piece. It should stick pretty well. And the more you move it, like I'm doing it, the less sticky it becomes. And right now, up where I am, it's hot weather. unusually hot for where I'm living. And so my fingers are sweaty and all kinds of things affect how that thing's going to stick, including, when you sand the primer, if there's any leftover little bits of sanded primer, it's not going to stick as well. So here I get it as close as I can, but this part is pretty good. I touch it with my finger, but you can see it's kind of a struggle, but as long as you get it down there and you're able to roll all the way along that straight edge and stay on your line, that's all you're after. So it's not rocket science, but it takes a while. I mean, this whole thing took me essentially 3 days to 3 days to get all the lines put back in. And again, there's parts that are not perfect, but it's okay. Here again, that part looks good, so I'm getting that part right in the middle. And then I think I go for the last part up against the lower part of the wing. It's also hard I want to show people actually doing this stuff. Someone commented on one of the comments they like the fact that I got actual pictures or actual videos of doing this stuff rather than just slideshows, and I like that too. It's easier to make a slideshow, but it's more instructive to show people actually doing this, because this is in real time and it's tedious to watch, I know, but it's still to try to give you a general feel for this is the kind of stuff it takes to make these things work. Same old, trying to make sure it lines up on my line and trying to make sure that it's going to be a good fit. And then I go ahead and emboss that panel line yet again. And after that, the nacelles are done. The main part of the nacelles. I think that's the last piece. Oh no, I got to do the little landing gear piece. Oh, and then there's one piece that goes on that back part, which is the other clamshell of the landing gear. The middle piece I'm going to put in now, which are just straight lines. I can choose the ruler. Those are the covers that go over the oleo struts when the oleo struts are down, and the wheels on this thing work like a JU88 or a Corsair or a P40. So when they go up, they rotate, and the wheel goes flat and goes up into that big old case behind the nacelle there. And so that actually is supposed to have a hinge line, which I'll put in. Those open up to let the wheel up, and then they close once it's up there. But all the pictures I see of the airplane, except for the ones where it was salvaged at the end of the World War II, captured, and the ones that are in England where it's a real one is out on display, those rear doors are actually, they're always up, they're never down. But this is the piece from the model, and what I did was I put it down, and lo and behold, I got it real close. So that's how I got the angles to look close to what they're supposed to look like, because that's going to be on the oleo strut and folded out. And we'll when we get the wheels situated, we'll deal with that. So that's done, and then this is the last piece. This is this part. There's a little connector, should be a hinge line or an opening. I'm sorry. Between where those clamshells open to let that wheel go up underneath there, because the wheel again would be flat, and when it's retracted and it's up in that place that I'm drawing on. Anyway, this then is the last piece of the actual, the major parts of the re-embossing or creating the panel lines, and it's neither as hard nor as easy as it looks. Just takes some practice, and the biggest thing is patience. And if you mess up, which I did many times, all you got to do is fill the line. Many times I would put a ruler against something, and I would try to make it straight, and it wasn't. It was obviously off, and that looked dumb. So I had to put putty on it, sand it, and then try again. But there they are. There's the bottom nacelles, and the sides are all done. So the thing is essentially all rescribed. And as I said, we'll see how she turns out when we start to real paint on it and color. But I got the bottom all done, which I didn't show you, but that's boring. It's all flat. And I wanted to show you the nacelles because they're curved, and that's just the way I did the fuselage as well. So, in fact, the nacelles were harder because they're a tighter little curve, and they're an oblong, weird shape. So, it's basically ready. couple of little details I need to do on it. These lines here, I think I said this once before, but those are going to be, these are where, I think those are fabric covered, and I want to put little rib tapes over that. So I want to cut tape and put strips on there with my little Tamiya tape there. I want to do that on the ailerons too. I got to draw in where the aileron ribs go. Looking at the real airplane, they're not that prominent, but I think we just add interest at this juncture. But it's looking pretty snazzy. Now, the next thing I want to do was start putting on the exhaust areas. And so here's the piece that comes in the kit. I've cut them out, and you can see that there's a drawing on there where I'm going to end up putting the exhausts themselves. I'm not going to put them on until the thing's painted. That's where all the little exhausts go. They're individual little pieces. You roll them into little triangles. This is the shroud that goes over the outside. So based on the pictures, this piece, what I'm trying to do is the edge of it has a pronounced roll in it, a pronounced little curve. But I do think this piece is actually too small. I think it needs to be longer, because on the real airplane, it looks like there's a, it comes out, there's a piece of metal that goes out perpendicular to the nacelle over the, there's what I did. That's as best as I can get it. But it goes over the exhaust and then goes down in its curve, but it's a much more, I think if I was going to do this again, I would probably take these and actually make them a little bit bigger. But in any event, they're going to end up going right there. And I've already tested that they fit where they're supposed to. So they're just going to get glued in there. And so these are basically the shrouds, and then they have the indication of where I actually put my individual exhaust stubs. Which again, we're not going to do that till the very end and paint them up just with a paintbrush once we're all done. But put some glue on there, make sure that you have the right orientation, but that's easy. It just makes sense. You know which way the exhausts are going to actually go. And now you carefully, it's hard to do this again by trying to show you because my camera's not in a really good place. I got to know how people do really beautiful shots, how they make it look so good. Anyway, I'm trying to show you put it right there. And in this case, actually off camera, I pulled it off and moved it forward because I wanted it closer to that little line up front there. But anyway, just make sure it's straight, let it dry. You can always do a little bit of reforming of the shape to make it look a little bit spiffier. But basically, you basically put those on all 4 spots. And then they're good to go. So here it is with them all on. They look stark because they're not painted, but that's okay. I'm just going to paint them when I paint the rest of the model. And you can see that's where the exhaust stubs will go. You can see on the nose of the airplane, I didn't tell you this, I had to redo the nose because there's definitely a pronounced panel line in there where there's some guns. So I have to put the guns in. I got to put a couple of handholds and fix those other parts of the elevators, and she's ready.